All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into what has to be one of the most baffling, unsettling, and just thoroughly documented unsolved mysteries in American history. We're talking about a chilling case from 1978 that starts with something so incredibly ordinary, a simple drive home after a sports game, and ends in a completely unexplained nightmare deep in the wilderness. So if you're the kind of person who gets fascinated by puzzles where the pieces just absolutely refuse to fit together, well, you're definitely in the right place. Think about this for a second. How do five grown men with a totally reliable vehicle on a clear route just end up abandoning safety to walk into a freezing, unforgiving forest? That right there is the baffling paradox at the very heart of our analysis today. It's a mystery so complex and contradictory, it's the kind of thing that will genuinely keep you awake at night. Let's break down the evidence and see if we can make sense of the completely unexplainable. Part 1. The Winter Night Disappearance. A basketball game in 1978. Part 2. Meet the five friends, a bond like brothers. Okay, so to really grasp this, we need to meet the guys at the center of it. These are five incredibly close friends with a really unique dynamic, just heading out for what should have been a totally normal, fun evening. You've got Ted Ware, the oldest at 32, a bit shy but fiercely protective of the group. Jack Madruga, 30, just a sweet, happy-go-lucky guy who actually owned the car they took that night. Bill Sterling, 29, a massive basketball fanatic who put this whole outing together. Then there's Gary Mathias, 25, an Army veteran. He had a history of psychiatric episodes, but it's important to note he was actively treating his condition and doing really well at the time. And finally, Jackie Hewitt, 24, who was so close to Jack that a lot of locals literally just assumed they were brothers. They were all just pumped to go watch a UC Davis versus Chico State basketball game. Part 3. Tracing the final steps, the night of February 24th. Let's trace their steps. Their plan was super straightforward. They all pile into Jack's prized possession, this turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego. They get to the campus in Chico City, grab some popcorn, cheer on their teams. Total, normal, lively energy. The game wraps up around 9 p.m. They get back in the Montego for what should have been a short, really familiar drive south, back home to Marysville. By 9:30 p.m., they make a quick pit stop at a convenience store in Olivehurst. But the very next morning, they're just gone. Not a single one of them made it back to their beds. Let's look closely at that last confirmed sighting. The cashier at that Olivehurst store said they bought completely standard road trip stuff, right? Chips, candy, drinks. They seemed to be in totally fine spirits. But there was this one eerie little detail the cashier mentioned later. The men kept walking in and out of the store. They were pacing. It almost looked as though they were waiting for someone out in the parking lot or maybe talking to someone outside. It's really the first tiny crack in the timeline of an otherwise totally ordinary night. Part 4. The Baffling Discoveries. A car abandoned in the snow. So the next morning, when the families realize the guys are missing, absolute panic sets in. This triggers a massive search. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, police, the whole nine yards. And pretty quickly, the first major anomaly pops up. And it's practically a geographical impossibility. Instead of taking a straight shot down a well-paved, totally familiar highway home, Jack's car is found abandoned on this isolated snowy stretch called Forbustown Road, way up in the Plumas National Forest. They were miles and miles away from where they should have been, heading in literally the exact wrong direction into dangerous mountain terrain. Just why? And the state of the abandoned car? That just makes the whole thing even weirder. The engine was off, the keys were still right there inside, and the doors were left totally unlocked. Those snack wrappers from the convenience store were sitting right there on the seats. But here's the absolute kicker. The car was not stuck. The snow wasn't nearly deep enough to trap a heavy car like that Montego, and the tires were completely fine. Five grown men could have easily pushed it if it had somehow slipped. Plus, the police found zero footprints leading away from the car. It's like the earth just swallowed them whole. And honestly, the most alarming part, Gary Mathias left his essential psychiatric meds right there in the vehicle. A guy who relies on daily medication doesn't just willingly leave it behind to go for a hike in the freezing pitch-black woods. 6. That is the number of agonizing months that went by with absolutely zero answers. Winter turns into spring, spring turns into the sweltering August in 1978, and these families are just living in a state of suspended grief, waiting for a phone call that just never comes. Until finally, the silence breaks. Way deep in the treacherous wilderness, a staggering 20 miles uphill from where the car was parked, a hunter is hiking through the dense Plumas National Forest. He literally stumbles upon this old, dusty, abandoned Forest Service trailer. Naturally, he's curious, so he goes up to it, and inside, he makes a grim, completely heart-stopping discovery. Inside that freezing, pitch-black trailer, he finds a body tucked into a bed, almost like the person was just sleeping. Forensics later confirmed it was 32-year-old Ted Wayher. And the autopsy? It revealed a really horrifying truth. Ted had succumbed to hypothermia, which is that deadly drop in body temperature from extreme cold, along with starvation. He had lost roughly 100 pounds before he finally passed away. But here is where the story shifts from just tragic to deeply, deeply inexplicable. Because inside that exact same trailer, right there around Ted, were matches, plenty of firewood, and heavy survival food rations. The autopsy proved that Ted actually survived in that freezing trailer for an unimaginable 13 weeks. Really let that sink in. 13 weeks. Yet he never once started a fire to stay warm. He barely even touched the food. Why on earth wouldn't he? Was he just too weak? Was he waiting in the dark for someone to come back? Or was something else completely paralyzing him with fear in that bed? Tragically, the nightmare didn't end in the trailer. Searches of the immediate area right around it turned up the skeletal remains of Jack, Bill, and Jackie. They had also succumbed to the freezing elements out there, so now we have 4 friends, dead in the unforgiving wilderness, miles away from a perfectly working car. Which immediately brings up the most haunting piece of this entire puzzle. We've got 4 bodies, but 5 men walked into the woods that night. So, where in the world is Gary Mathias? Fast forward over 45 years later. Despite endless searches by law enforcement, independent sleuths, everybody, Gary vanished without a single trace. No body, no clothing, no clues whatsoever. He just disappeared into the thin mountain air, leaving this massive, frustrating void in the investigation that still haunts detectives today. Part 5, Haunting Unsolved Theories, trying to explain the unexplainable. All right, let's try to lay out the theories here and see if anything sticks. First up, lost in the dark. Did they just take a wrong turn? Sure, maybe, but that absolutely does not explain abandoning a working car. Second, the stranger. Remember that weird pacing back at the convenience store? Were they coerced or maybe chased up the mountain by someone they ran into? Third, a mental health episode. Did Gary, being without his meds, suffer a severe crisis that somehow panicked the whole group into fleeing into the pitch-black woods? Some local folklore even leans into the supernatural, talking about legends of strange lights and weird memory loss in that specific patch of forest. And finally, the criminal element. The idea that a bad actor intentionally drove them up there, stranded them, and forced them into the snow to hide some sort of crime. But look, as we go through these theories, none of them logically fit all the facts. Why walk 20 miles, uphill, in the freezing cold, in the dark, when your car has a working heater and a running engine? Even if you're terrified, why not just lock the doors and drive the other way? Why did Ted literally starve to death while surrounded by survival food? This absolute lack of logic is exactly what makes this case such an inescapable labyrinth. Part 6. The Enduring Legacy. A Grief That Never Ends. Ultimately, beyond the true crime puzzle of it all, the real tragedy here falls squarely on the families. Just imagine the mother of Jack and Jackie, losing 2 bright lights in her life on the exact same night. Imagine Ted's parents, realizing their son lay in a cold trailer for 13 weeks, just hoping for a rescue that never came. They've waited decades for the truth, and for so many of them, time just ran out before they ever got answers. Which leaves us with this final, chilling thought. Will we ever actually find Gary Mathias? Will the Plumas National Forest ever give up the final secret of the Yuba County Five? Honestly, it seems like some secrets are just swallowed by the dark timber forever, leaving us to stare at the evidence and wonder what really went down on that freezing winter night. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.